Bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
The Cinik Radio Podcast.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio Podcast. Here are your hosts, Cinik.
Hey, the facts are Spider-Man belongs in the MCU. Sony was delusional thinking they didn't need Marvel, and now he's back. And we, the fans, are 100% proudly responsible for that.
Agree?
As long as DC wants to make dark and gritty movies, they're going to lag behind Marvel in every category.
And Ryan.
Batman vs. Superman is objectively better than Infinity War.
IG, did we just forget Kim?
You guys completely suck.
This is the greatest show of all time.
Looks like we're going to have to make a few adjustments on that opening. And then there was 3. Hey, everybody. It's episode 154 of the Cinik Radio Podcast. And I'm your host, Cinik. And joining me, as always, my very own Wonder Twins, Igri and Ryan. And on this week's show, we reveal our next pick for the worst person of the week. We do another It Came from Florida. And then with the success of several DC movies, and including the TV shows, which were the world's most downloaded at the time, Peacemaker, can DC keep up that momentum? As the Batman hit the theaters this past week, we break it down live. First off, I'm going to ask you both. IG, I'll go to you. What format did you see it, and how was the audience?
I saw it on a DLX screen in a theater that has nice reclining seats and everything. The heat and everything made the wife really happy because she got to keep her butt warm through the whole movie. Really good sound, really like Dolby Atmos or something, but huge screen, and theater was about half full, but that's because I didn't go on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. I went on Sunday, so it worked out really well. That I think waiting a couple of days got me to get in a theater where I wasn't jam packed with people, because I'm pretty sure that, and it's not that I couldn't have gone the earlier days, but I really kind of wanted to avoid having too many people stepping over me, even though this theater's got pretty good room to move around and stuff, because like I said, reclining seats and stuff. It's pretty nice. So good sized crowd, but it wasn't packed.
Yeah. How warm was your butt in New York City, Ryan?
So I saw it twice. First time was at Dolby Cinemas on the Thursday night of the opening, which is actually quiet. It was a Thursday at 3, and I mean, it wasn't dead, but definitely wasn't a packed theater, and the crowd didn't seem that into it, which is surprising. You'd think an opening night crowd was going to be really into it, or at least they weren't as vocal. The second time I saw it was a full house on Friday night at a regular theater, so it wasn't anything special. Definitely wasn't as nice as a Dolby cinema. And there the crowd was really into it. Got applause at the end. People were hanging on stuff. There were a couple of oohs and ahs at certain Easter eggs. So it definitely had a better crowd at the second showing.
Yeah, I saw it in a Dolby too, northern New Jersey. The crowd was kind of into it. A few too many trailers. I mean, they're really packing it full, and there's not that many good movies out there, so the trailers were a bit lacking, but the crowd was into it. The theater was packed. There wasn't a seat left. I mean, I can't say that they were as reactive as during Spider-Man, but everybody was there. You could tell that you had a few fans in Batman shirts, and everybody was glued to the scene. Nobody was checking their phone or talking to, there was no crosstalk throughout the theater. No one called in a bomb threat, because that's a very Thunder Gun thing to do. So overall, it was a good experience. I loved being back in the movies. Nobody was wearing masks, which was super great, because the whole night kind of felt normal. We went and got some dinner afterwards, and it felt almost like post-COVID. IG, along with the different versions of the Bat, we get different looks of Gotham City. In your opinion, how does this one rank?
As far as the look of Gotham, I really did like this look, right? It kind of gave you a lot of hints to things that they've done in other things, right? They're kind of a New York type peninsula thing where you kind of in islands, sort of, a lot of water around it, kind of Chicago feel at the same time as a New York feel. It's kind of a little mix between the two places as far as what Gotham kind of felt like. And, But, like most Batman movies, Batman deals a lot in the dark. So, I mean, there's a lot of dark. But the look of the city, as far as I'm concerned, there's some that I really hate. Like the last of the original Batman movies that came out where everything looked like it was like Art Deco and neon and everything else. That was nuts. That was terrible. I hated that look. The Nolan stuff was pretty good, but it was just almost too recognizable. Like it looked too much like things that exist in our world, and this is a DC world. These are fictional places, and and I know they shot it in places that exist, but they did a good enough time masking things and putting in the right kind of CGI to make it look like it's familiar, but it doesn't look like anywhere in particular from our world.
Yeah, to me, this was by far my favorite Gotham. It looked real life. I mean, let's all yakking aside, Batman, he's from Gotham, which is supposed to be New York City, and this was New York City. It was a very goth, emo type feel to it, old school, a lot of, Gotham this and Gotham that. It felt like it was right out of a comic book without being too cartoonish. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I agree. I think the issue, I really like, Batman, 1989 Batman. I loved Tim Burton's kind of gothic, version of Gotham. And in the comics, Gotham is its own character in a lot of ways. And I feel like the one critique of the Nolan movies, and maybe it's because I'm from New York and I've been to Chicago and Pittsburgh, like a lot of it's shot in Chicago, Pittsburgh, and New York. Like it's very familiar. Like there, not much change. There wasn't much CGI to make Gotham its own city. It was ripped out of like the stock exchange was from here, the skyline from Chicago. Like it really just felt like these cities. So it didn't feel like Gotham was its own character because it was like, well, I know these places. And I think this, he did a great job of kind of making Gotham its own character and having it, have breathing life into it, that there, I guess there are levees, although they didn't mention it until the very end. And, that the architecture looks interesting and the design, really felt grimy. It felt real and lived in. So I think he did a really great job and probably the best of all the movies of making Gotham a real place.
IG, the promotional posters gave us some non-consensual spoilers. I mean, every villain under the sun was in this, along with Carmine Falcone. Was the movie pleasantly plump, or did it feel a little overcrowded to you?
I think that some of the people that they gave us in some of the posters and everything, like Falcone and everything, may have been almost underused. If they're trying to make them the actual villain. And that's the thing is I think most of the time when you get a Batman movie, like they have these other crime families in the movie, but they're not the bad guy. The bad guy is driving those characters' story somehow on their own. Like if you look back in The Dark Knight, right, they have a bunch of crime families and trying to launder money and everything, and the Joker ends up messing with a bunch of their things, right? So the crime families are there, and it's part of the story. But if they were attempting to make like John Turturro's Falcone somebody more important, then they I don't think that's what they were trying to do. You're really trying to push Riddler and maybe Penguin, right? You're trying to push them because nobody wants to go watch a Batman movie about mob bosses, right? We want to see Jokers and Riddlers and Penguins and those things. That's what we want to see, Harley Quinns and stuff. We don't want to see, a movie about like, a Sopranos movie set with Batman in the background. That's not what people go to see for Batman. Like they can make a Sopranos movie and make money, but they don't need to do it with Batman.
Well, that is a pretty good point you bring up, IG. I mean, Ryan, having such recognizable and even the upper tier villains in the movie, do you feel like that kind of took some of the steam out of the main protagonist's sails? Like the Riddler wasn't as important as he should have been in the plot?
No, not at all. I think in this case, it felt, and one of the things I really loved about the movie is that it felt like a Batman graphic novel brought to life. And if you read any of the good graphic novels, he's got his rogues gallery, and you're gonna have a variety of villains, involved. And and so if you read any of them, you're going to see that he's going to be dealing with Falcone here and the Joker here, and then whoever, and then it's whoever the main villain is. So what I really liked about what Matt Reeves did actually was that he really did a good job of, I think, blending all the storylines and all the villains and making it work. And effectively, they all are integral to the plot, especially Falcone with his connection to Bruce Wayne and his family, and to just everything that's going on in Gotham. So I think it was fine. And then it also works as a sidebar as kind of the origin for the Penguin. Now the Penguins, rise to power as, there's a power vacuum. So, and I really love John Turturro's performance, and I don't think he was there that long. So I think that when I initially heard about the story, I thought, oh crap, there's going to be way too many villains. This is going to be insane. But I really did like Matt Reeves's ability to blend these villains and make them work in a cohesive story.
Well, the cast was jam-packed with a lot of established stars and some up-and-comers, from Zoe Kravitz all the way to Colin Farrell. IG, who shined, who didn't? We can't hear you.
Sorry about that. The performances were all done very well, right? Like Zoe Kravitz was really probably now my new favorite Catwoman of all time. She did a great job in that role. And she just embodied things and like bringing things back to where they came from the comics and not making her just kind of nobody. Like there's a lot of things that happen in comic books, especially, is everybody's somehow connected to somebody else, which makes everything more interesting. And that they did that here, which made me happy. John Turturro did great in his role. Colin Farrell did wonderful as a Penguin. I thought that was a really good way to imagine him. Riddler was creepy as shit, which I really liked kind of going that way, but at the same time I didn't. I almost wanted to see somebody who was more playful, I guess, as a Riddler, but taken this way, the problem I have with it is just it felt too familiar to other movies I've seen, Chinatown, Seven, things like that, in which, that movie exists. And while it's a good movie, and if you're going to copy something, at least copy something good, while I liked the portrayal and I thought it was really well acted, I guess I would have maybe liked to have seen it gone a different direction.
The thing that caught me the most off guard, Ryan, was we got a Nirvana song in the middle of the movie. I mean, it was a Batman movie, so it was both completely out of context and out of the blue, but it kind of fit in perfectly, no?
Yeah, no, I mean that what's interesting with this is whenever we hear trailers, there are these trailer houses, right, that put together most of the trailers. So a lot of times, like, and they do a great job often of selling you a great movie, and then you go in to see it and it's terrible. Like Suicide Squad is a good example of that. So I don't know if it was a trailer house that put it together, but I just figured, oh well, they just threw the Nirvana song in, blended it in with the theme, and that's that. Not expecting it to be part of the movie, but it blended perfectly. It fit the tone of the movie perfectly, and even though it had, that theme comes in a couple of times. I mean, that song, it just works for this. It works with the tone. It works with the score, and so I really liked it. It was like just perfect use of that song.
It really was, and it just reminded me that people our age are now starting to make these big blockbuster films. Yes. Matt Reeves is only a few years difference between me and IG, so I was happy to hear a little bit of the grunge, and that song is super haunting. Everything from Nirvana would have fit in that spot, but they did real well. Yeah. IG, I don't think anybody can dispute that Robert Pattinson filled the Cape Crusader's suit, but did he convince his Bruce Wayne?
That's one of the things is it's some of the same comparisons we made when we looked at people who played Spider-Man, right? Some people were a good Peter Parker, bad Spider-Man, good Spider-Man, that kind of stuff. And I think that he works as Batman. He looks fine. His mannerisms are fine. He moves fine. He speaks fine. But as Bruce Wayne, I wasn't sold. Because, and I understand this is supposed to be a very young Bruce Wayne, but if you're trying to kind of hide the fact that, you're the Batman and you're Bruce Wayne, you don't want people to push those two things together, maybe don't look so brooding and sad and don't do anything but show up to things brooding and sad everywhere you go. Like, you need to be a billionaire. You need to be a dude that runs around, spends money, womanizes, does the things, so nobody even thinks that you could potentially be the Batman. Nobody could put that together because you don't have the time with all the crazy stuff that's going on with your life. And I understand that, like, behind closed doors, that's who you can be. You can be yourself. But when you're out in public, I mean, he showed up a couple of times as Bruce Wayne in the movie, and, like, he almost didn't talk. I mean, he had the Edward Cullen look when he was out doing that. And that kind of pushed me away from his portrayal of Bruce Wayne. Like I said, Batman, I think it was very strong. Probably one of the best performances. Him and Christian Bale are right there, and Michael Keaton. I love Michael Keaton's Batman, so he'll always get a vote from me. But it didn't sell me as Bruce Wayne at all. Like, he was not a good Bruce Wayne.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So yeah, it was an intentional choice. Like, I think that, which is one of the things I liked about this, that Matt Reeves, like, committed to the choices that he made in the movie. I do think his portrayal of Batman, and obviously there's, like, the recency bias, so I have to see it a few times, let it settle in. But I do think his portrayal of Batman is maybe the best we've gotten in live action. You know, I mean, he's angry, and he's a little unhinged and not quite in control, and I think he's unsure, and he really did a great job kind of acting in the mask and just portraying somebody who's just still trying to figure things out. What I liked about the choice with Bruce Wayne is, you know, we've always talked about this, like, Bruce Wayne is the mask, right? Batman's the character. Batman is who he is. That's him. That's his focus. And Bruce Wayne is the mask that he wears to, you know, to do what he needs to do, you know, not running around Gotham punching people in the face. And I think that in this movie, he's not realized that. He doesn't understand that. He doesn't know that. And I think part of what happens and part of his growth as a character in the movie is he realizes, you know, he should realize, like, there is a role for Bruce Wayne to play, and I need to tap into that. I need to figure out who the character of Bruce Wayne is and how he can effectively help me, you know, rid Gotham of crime and rid Gotham of corruption. So I do think that there was an intentional choice not to portray the two. Because also another thing is, this is the most Batman we've ever gotten in a movie. I mean, he was Batman the whole time. He was in the costume more than any other movie. So I really do think it was an intentional choice, and I'm okay with that. Like, we didn't get Bruce Wayne because Bruce Wayne, you know, for all intents and purposes, doesn't exist yet. And then in future iterations, we will see the more charismatic, you know, playboy billionaire, you know, down the road. But we didn't need that here. You know, this was the guy that we got.
IG, the Bat gadgets are the staple of the character. Outside of being a detective, he's also kind of an innovator and inventor. We got some snazzy new contacts, the good old grappling gun. What are some of your favorites from this movie and the past?
Well, we didn't get the bat shark repellent spray, so I guess that's good. You know, the grappling gun, you got to get the wonderful toys. It always gives me a throwback to Mallrats, so anytime that shows up, I always kind of quietly giggle to myself.
Fly, fat ass, fly.
And especially since that was filmed in, like, just outside of Minneapolis here, you know, so I don't know. That one always gives me good giggles, you know, but I guess my problem with the gadgets thing was the lack thereof, right? He didn't have as many things that he could use technologically to give him advantages or things to look at in other places. The contacts were really cool. The grappling hook is just a classic standard, you know, and Batmobile was awesome. Loved the Batmobile in this one. But, like, even when I was seeing things happen and, like, he's having his fight and he's got, like, the electrified gloves so he could shock people and everything, but it looked like he had almost like Boba Fett style, like, or Mandalorian style whistling birds that were just huge on his wrists. They just never did anything. They were just there. They looked cool.
Maybe he
I'm
just
like,
likes
I
to
wanted
accessorize.
I wanted to see one of them shoot out or have him take one and throw it at somebody, or a batarang, something. Like, I wanted to see some of those things, and we didn't really get much of that yet. And again, maybe that all leads into, you know, this is a very early Batman. This is like a year 2 Batman. And maybe he hasn't developed all of that stuff yet. But, like, if it's showing, like, some things on the costume, because, like, he had the belt, so there should be some things in the belt. And he had the stuff on the wrist, so there should be some things on the wrist. That's the kind of stuff, like, that's Batman to me. And maybe it's because I'm old and, like, you know, I remember growing up and even watching the old Adam West Batman, where every episode some new bat gadget came out, you know, and, you know, that's where the batarangs and the bat this and the bat copter and all those bat things came from. Maybe I'm just nostalgic that way, but, you know, some of it, like, I could see there was something there, like, hey, let's use that. Like, let's not just tease that he has this thing and he's just restraining himself, especially not when he's beating the living shit out of some of the people.
Yeah, kind of straight from the news and playing off the mistrust of a real political system. The Riddler is the main protagonist in the film. Ryan, do you felt like he was kind of a worthy adversary for this opening Batman movie?
Yes and no in a couple ways. I like the portrayal. I really like Paul Dano's or Dano. I don't know if you pronounce it Dano, whatever it is. Dano. I love his performance. I thought it was great. Especially that scene at the end was one of was one of the best scenes in any Batman movie. I like how again he weaves everything together. I do think if you're gonna nitpick, like Batman's the world's greatest detective, and the Riddler's supposed to be somebody who's like his intellectual equal. At the end of the day, like the riddles were pretty pedestrian, right? Like they were pretty simple. Like the entire thing that he was able to weave was not that great. He got at the end he kind of got everything he wanted to do done, and so he was pretty effective. But I do think that as far as like if you have two of the most intelligent people in the world kind of going back at each other, and it's a small nitpick. It was a little straightforward and a little easier than one would have expected, unless the Riddler intentionally did that because he wanted Batman to solve everything, which it did seem like that because he seemed to think they were in cahoots, but it just seemed a little weird that they weren't a little bit more difficult, given the intellect of the people involved.
Well, and for the world's greatest detective, he did not detect all that well.
Yeah.
If you're supposed to be that intellectual, come on, let's see him do some other. I mean, even if we look back at like the Nolan series and everything, like when he was like firing shots into bricks and stuff to see how they would break up and things like that, so that he could nail things down. That's detective type shit. Like having contacts that a computer tells you all the answers, and you still kind of have trouble putting things together. You're not the world's greatest detective. We need to see some of that, and that's more what I was hoping we were going to get out of this. You're right, though. That's the best comparison I've heard of that so far is like they're supposed to be like super high intellectual, and the bar was set pretty low. Like it was a little odd.
Ryan, I'm just a dude named Paul Dano playing the Riddler, acting like John Doe. Did they borrow a little too much from Seven in the third act? The notebooks, the apartment, and even some of the lines.
No. I mean, we knew going in that it was influenced by Seven, and clearly it was there. But I think we've seen it's a bit of a trope now, like the crazy unhinged villain, like with the apartment that's all a mess and photos and obsessive, just insanity. So I didn't get too many John Doe vibes. I mean, it was definitely close. I shouldn't say I didn't get too many. It worked, and it didn't take me out of it that it was so close to that.
I thought it was almost shot for shot when they were, especially when they went into his apartment and everything. I was like, oh my God, this is Seven. They just made Seven again, except without getting people for very specific sins. They just get people for being corrupt. So they simplified why he was doing it to him and then just made it the same thing.
Because they shouldn't give me new toys.
Oh.
So, IG, blow the seawall, check. Get everyone in Gotham City Garden, check. Round up a gang of wacko shooters from the internet and shoot the mayor, check. Did the master plan work a little too flawlessly, seeming the master or the brains behind the operation is locked away in Arkham?
Well, that's almost some of the standard Batman stuff that happens anyway, right? That happened in the Dark Knight. A lot of things were still moving when the Joker was in the holding with the Gotham Police Department then. They've done this before a number of times in a number of different movies where like the pieces are still moving, which, I mean, quite honestly, like you think of it like a job, right? If all of a sudden the boss just decides not to come to work anymore for the next couple of weeks, is the job just going to stop functioning, or is everybody going to still do their part because they know what they're supposed to do? They were hired to do a job. So they're going to still show up and do their job, right? Because they're expecting to get paid. So maybe they were already paid and they're showing up to do their job. And, maybe Gotham just has an inordinate amount of like skilled shooters that can like pick off running people from rafters. Why not?
Ryan, in the end, we meet the Joker. And with the introduction to almost every villain that's ever fought Batman in his rogues gallery, what's your prediction for the next movie? Who's going to be the big bad?
That's a good question. I know I've heard interviews with Matt Reeves about it. It's interesting. And we'll get into this when I give my final review. I really like this movie. I love this movie. I want to know what Matt Reeves is going to do for a sequel, because I don't know that he's going to try to mimic and copy this tone. It would maybe be a little too much. So I'm interested to see what he does or what story. I think that, there's so much to draw from with Batman that we haven't seen on screen. That it would be a shame to kind of get another Joker story. Although the guy that they cast, who's I'm assuming is a Joker, is really good and creepy, and could probably be a good choice. If you've ever seen Killing of the Sacred Deer, he's insane in that movie, and we'll sell you on him as a Joker. But I kind of would like a Court of Owls movie, which I think Pattinson talked about wanting. That would be kind of interesting. But Hush, there's quite a few like really interesting Batman stories that I think would fit with Matt Reeves' style and fit with this world. So I'm excited for whatever they come up with. But yeah, I do kind of hope they don't go down the Joker well, because we've just seen it so much. And look, we've got 2 Oscar-winning performances based on the Joker. And then another one in Jack Nicholson that's up there. So I don't know that we need another one. And then all it will do is get comparisons to the other performances. So maybe have the Joker as like a small side character, maybe somebody who he beats up in the beginning and that's it. But to have a movie built around him, I just don't know that it's something we need or I want, especially with so much material to draw from.
I think we're going to get the ventriloquist, right? They're going to roll him out, or Matter Eater Man is going to show up and be a bad guy.
Exactly, yeah.
Listen, so far they're on a roll and things are working. So I don't know what they're going to try to. We did get Polka Dot Man in a movie and it worked.
Yeah.
So IG, give me your top 3 Batman of all time.
Top 3 Batman?
Yeah.
Oh, that's easy. It's going to be this one, Robert Pattinson. It's going to be Christian Bale. It's going to be Michael Keaton. Simple. Like it's not even really a contest. I'm not going to count Adam West. He's very campy and it's fun and I enjoy it. And then and he would be next, so he'd be 4th for me. And then maybe Val Kilmer and then George Clooney, right? And that's it. That's all of them, right? Oh no, Affleck. Affleck would come right after Adam West, I think. Affleck's just down the list for me, just because maybe I'm a little sour because this was supposed to be his movie. And he got pissy and decided I'm going to go off and do other shit, which is basically nothing. Maybe he just knew that he was going to get back together with J-Lo, and he's like, well, I don't have time for Batman. I have to chase J-Lo around. But, yeah, maybe I'm sour, but he's going to fall beneath Adam West for me. So it's going to be Pattinson 1, Christian Bale 2, Michael Keaton 3, Adam West, and then Affleck. All
right, Ryan, give me your final thoughts and your rating.
Okay. I wanted to give my three a quick 3 Batman.
Okay.
Real quick. It'll be Pattinson 1. I'm gonna go with Affleck 2 because of how it was shot, and we got the most like comic book looking action scenes with Affleck, and then Keaton 3. But that's it. I'll keep it at that. Those are my
really. Yeah, Bale's not ahead of Keaton for you.
If you include Bruce Wayne, then yes. If you just say Batman, I'm gonna say Keaton. So that would be how it would be. If it's Batman / Bruce Wayne, then I think Bale's got the best Bruce Wayne. But if we're just talking Batman, I like Keaton's kind of slightly unhinged, Batman performance. So that would be it for me. And again, like Affleck, I don't know how great of a Batman he was, but I loved the way that those, whether you like the movies or not, those scenes were shot amazing. That one scene in the warehouse, when he's saving Martha, was incredible. So I really like that, and so I would give Affleck that for just based on those. But okay, so final review and rating. So so I really did love the movie. I think for a few different reasons. So first, it's fundamentally a Batman movie. There was like this intentional choice I think that Matt Reeves had to focus on Batman, both in the costume, we got him more in the costume than anything else, and his psyche. And I think he did a really good job at showing that Batman is a character, and that he hasn't learned to wear the mask of Bruce Wayne. And so we get, to me, again, the best representation of Batman on film. I thought it was the first movie to really feel like a comic book. You can compare it, like The Dark Knight is an amazing movie. It didn't feel like a comic. I think this really feels like a comic, from the narration and the journaling that happens in comics to Gotham feeling like a real lived-in city. It had the cast of characters, all the narratives that were weaved together. It really felt like a comic. I think unlike any other Batman movie, also it's a detective story. And I loved the tone. Like it felt like Seven. It had the Seven vibes and Zodiac and some Saw. And there were moments where it really felt like a horror movie. So I really felt like this movie tonally was different from any other Batman movie we've got. We had a great cast. I think Pattinson was great. We didn't even talk about Jeffrey Wright as Gordon, who was awesome, and I think his chemistry was great. I think everyone's chemistry with Pattinson worked well. Colin Farrell was awesome as Penguin. I'm actually excited about the movie. Zoe Kravitz was great. The only thing that disappointed me slightly was Andy Serkis, because I just feel like he didn't get enough time. But I thought the cast was great, and I thought the score was amazing. It was maybe not as iconic as Danny Elfman or like as hard hitting as Hans Zimmerman, but I felt like this score worked perfectly with this movie, and I just loved it. Like I just loved listening to it. I think I had one stumbling block that stopped this from being like an almost perfect Batman movie, and I think it was the third act. I feel like the first 2 hours and change was slow. But it was deliberate. It had a pace, it had a tone, and it built up to what I just thought was, just a mesmerizing scene with Dano and Pattinson. That scene was incredible, and I think Reeves could have, ended that on a like what's in the box type of moment. And I actually thought, oh wow, they're going to end this movie without a crazy action scene. And there was something that could have been done there. It would have taken some courage, but it would have been great to end it somewhere with that scene. And I wish they had the courage, but instead they had the whole big third act set piece, which I just felt shoehorned in, and it was fine. Like that scene, it looked great. It showed Batman being heroic. It was the moment that Batman goes from being a tool of fear and vengeance to also realizing that he has to be a hero. And I think it will pay dividends later on, but I just felt like it didn't quite work in the movie. And when you had this high of that scene, that interrogation scene with the Riddler, I felt like it was a bit of a letdown. It never lives up to that scene for me. So I think that's the one little letdown and stumbling block. So otherwise, like my rating, I give it a 9.5. I did really love the movie. I've seen it twice. I'm try to go see it again, in the next couple of weeks. I really enjoyed it. And to me, it's like right up there with The Dark Knight. It's maybe not quite at the level of The Dark Knight. It's close. But yeah, 9.5 for me.
Wow. IG?
So I think it was a good movie, but I don't think it was anywhere near 9.5. And maybe it's because I was looking for things that I wasn't getting. I tried to go in without expectations, but when it's Batman, I always have certain expectations, right? Gadgets, smart, and certain things are going to happen, and not enough of them did. I mean, I know that we got more Batman, and that used to be one of my biggest complaints about superhero movies, that they've resolved more and more the more we go forward, is where you get to actually see the superhero being the superhero. And seeing a lot of Batman, I love that, because I don't want to go and really watch Bruce Wayne for two of the 3 hours. I want to see Batman, and they did that, which that ups my score a little bit. But to be the world's greatest detective, and not really. I really wanted, like I said earlier, a little more fun Riddler than just a creepy psychopath Riddler. It's a choice, and it wasn't a terrible choice, but it's just not what I was expecting in a Riddler. And I mean, I was expecting it, having seen the trailers and things like that he was going to be creepy, but I was just hoping there was going to be some fun to it, but it just turned into like, he's really a psychopath. He's a nutball. And okay, great. That's the choice we made. I thought, I like having Jeffrey Wright as Gordon, but I think he was poorly written, and he didn't get the things he was due. He could have done more. He could have spoken better. He could have done more things, because like if you look at him in Westworld, he was captivating and awesome in Westworld and written better there than he was here. So I think they underused him, and I agree with Ryan on the Andy Serkis thing. We needed more Alfred. Because Andy Serkis is a great actor, and like, let's not underuse him in anything. I mean, and he's finally getting more actual face time rather than having to be a CGI character, which is amazing, because he's a great actor. And I'll argue that until the day that I die. He's done a great job in every role he's done, from Gollum all the way up into Claw in the MCU. And I do like seeing people that are kind of going both directions, where you get to be in the MCU and you get to be over here. That's always fun. But I have a lot, the movie was just like probably 40 minutes too long. There's no reason it needed to be 3 hours. They could have gotten the stuff done much quicker, so by the time I was at the end of the movie, I was done. Like it just, I don't like feeling like I'm wasted coming out of a movie. I want to have some energy when I'm done. I want to feel pumped up when I'm done. And a lot of these movies, once they hit that 2 hours, 30-minute mark, like if you haven't wrapped it up or aren't in the midst of wrapping it up, I'm like, come on, we need to get to the end of this. Because if you want your stuff to be that long, put it on HBO Max, right? Where you can throw an hour a week. Like I can do that 10 times. But when I have to sit 3 hours all at once and keep going and keep going and keep going, it's just too long. Unless you have to have a lot of stuff going on. And like Ryan even said in his review, it was kind of slower in the beginning for like the first 2 hours and stretching things out and everything. And it was. And what that led to was a little bit of lethargy when I was getting to the third act. But that being said, it was a beautifully shot movie, really well acted, lots of positive things to say about it. I love Pattinson's Batman, and if they can teach him in further iterations to be a better Bruce Wayne, then I'm on board. If this is all we get, then I'm going to say that was a misfire on how they portrayed Bruce Wayne, because he should have, if he's already being Batman, he should already know how to put on the mask of Bruce Wayne. That's one of the things that he should have learned before you put on the cowl. But I also really loved the Catwoman portrayal. I thought she was amazing. I love Penguin. I thought it was cast well. It was beautifully shot. It was easy to watch, except for the length. So for me, it's going to be 7.5 is what I'm going to give it. I know it sounds disappointing, but there's enough things on this that drag it down for me that I think I've made clear throughout our review of this.
I'm going to fall in the middle of you guys, only because the things that I loved about this movie, Ryan has already stated, so I don't want to keep going back over it. There was a lot to love. It was a very good first attempt, but there was a lot that made me scratch my head too. Robert Pattinson more than fits the bill as the Bat, but not so much as Bruce Wayne. It felt to me a little like I was watching a My Chemical Romance lead singer biopic during some of it. The Riddler has always been way too Joker overlapping for my tastes, and everything else about the movie, it worked. Love the setting, love the world building. It was masterful. I didn't agree with the direction of the villain, but I loved everything else. I wish DC would have gave Batman a little more time to rest, so this would feel like a fresh start, because we didn't really cover new ground in all this. It just keeps feeling more and more recycled the more we do it, and they need to learn to lean on other characters, maybe go deeper down their bench. I'm glad the Cape Crusader is back, and I'm going to give it about an 8 for the effort. Jeffrey Wright is a goddamn national treasure. If you don't know that, then go watch Boardwalk Empire, because Dr. Narcisse is the scariest villain of all time. Andy Serkis is captivating on film, and I don't know if I like him as Alfred, because I just think he's too important of an actor to be doing a number 2 role. There's something about that guy that everything he does is interesting. Everything he says is interesting. I kind of wish they would give him a superhero role. Colin Farrell was doing his best Robert De Niro impersonation during some of the Penguin scenes, and it was funny to me, but it almost felt like they wrote the role for Robert De Niro. I loved him though, and I love Zoe Kravitz. So all in all, great first effort. I will definitely be in line with Take My Money for the sequel. And since I'm a baseball fan, IG, why don't we do Worst Person of the Week before we get out of here?
Well, the worst person of the week for us here at the Cinik Radio Podcast, because for the most part, we love sports, kind of all sports, but one of our biggest ones is baseball. We love baseball, and baseball has been postponed. We should be in spring training right now, in the thick of it, right? Starting to see players like new players coming around that might make the team, might help later in the season, seeing spring training games. All kinds of things should be going on, and none of it's happening, because baseball commissioner Manfred has just been really hard-headed, and they've not come to an agreement with the Players Association. So there's a lockout, and all of the major league team level can't conduct any baseball operations. Now, the minor league teams can continue to do their stuff and everything, but those players don't make any money anyway, so it's not costing baseball hardly anything. But the big games, the owners and the league are saying, no, we want to stand fast and do our thing. Funny enough, one of them has even turned into There's there are minor or semi-pro leagues out there that aren't associated with Major League Baseball in any way. One of them is in Kalamazoo, Michigan. The team is called the Growlers. They've actually issued a lifetime ban to Rob Manfred, saying that he's not allowed to come to their stadium. Not that he would ever go, but they're like, this man is detrimental to baseball as a whole, and we don't want him around our game, because he's awful. And it's just one of those things showing the league that had a huge amount of growth in the last 5 years, right, in revenue and everything else. And they're holding fast on what they want to give to the people that are making that growth possible, the players.
Yeah, they had a 30% revenue jump, Major League Baseball did, between 2015 and 2019. And the players actually overall took a deduction in pay. Salaries have gone down. And I'm not a fan of the salary cap, and I'm not a fan of these huge numbers, but I do believe that minor leaguers need to be taken care of. And I do think that they need to come to a deal sooner than later. We had the shortened season because of COVID. I mean, there's been lockouts before. Baseball is kind of a fading sport. And on a personal note, it's kind of been my quest to see a game in every single stadium, and I had a huge summer planned all around baseball. So they need to get this deal done. They need to get these players paid. And Rob Manfred, you're the worst person of the week. So that's about it. First, join us next week as we are going to start reviewing the Star Wars A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi as we gear up for Disney Plus's Moon Knight. I've been Cinik. Over there are my tag team partners, IG and Ryan. Thanks everybody who watched and listened and subscribed in the various social medias over the last week. Until next time, IG.
Don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CinicRadio.com. Available for download on iTunes.